Hannah began to describe this marshal, and the description sounded just like my mysterious visitor. That must have been the engine who came to see me last night. Who came to see you? So I told Hannah about the engine, and as I did, her face fell. Was his livery not identical, but fairly similar to yours? Yes. Was he on night shift? There were no night trains last night, Burke. She paused for a minute, and then spoke again. Oh my lord, he came to you last night, didn't he? He never told me his name, but... Wait a minute. I've noticed that you've been saying was a lot on this marshal. What do you mean, was? Burke, I don't know how to put this, but Marshall is dead. Dead? When did he die? On the 14th of April, 1912. Oh my goodness. Wasn't that? Yes, Burke. Marshall died on the same night that the Titanic hit the iceberg and sunk. I see that your mind is full of questions. Well, I never thought about ghosts or anything related to the supernatural, but please tell me about him. And so Hannah told me the story. Marshall, the Adams Radial, was built in 1885 and was the last member of his class to be built, like you were the last D11 to be built. He was a very kind locomotive and was popular with everyone, not as popular as the Flying Scotsman on the LNER, but he was very popular with the locals and engines, and everyone loved him, all except a certain 440. Marshall was always thinking happy thoughts. That's what keeps me going, he would tell us. When I was built in 1900, he took me under his wing and taught me how to be a reliable engine. Some even said that he was built in heaven and was sent by angels, because if an engine wasn't feeling well or unable to work, Marshall, without hesitation, would take over the trains, whether they were goods or passengers. He would also know how to brighten people's day if they felt down, and some even believed that his positive attitude was the inspiration for the story of the boy who could fly and never grew up. Well, since he had lots of happy thoughts, he should have been called Peter, and everyone would call him the Pan Engine. You know, Burke, I said the same thing to him one time, and we both laughed. But now I'm going to tell you about the 14th of April, 1912. There was a night express train from Waterloo to Sidmouth that night, and I was scheduled to take it. But unfortunately my cylinder cocks were cracked, and I couldn't move by myself. Marshall was there, and he felt sorry for me. I'll take the train for you tonight, Hannah. Thank you for the offer, Marshall, but you've been working hard all day. No, Hannah, I insist. I'll drop you off at the works, and I'll look after your passengers. Oh, thank you, Marshall. You're a godsend. And so Marshall took me to the works, and after dropping me off, he went to the station and picked up the passengers. Soon, the guard blew his whistle, and Marshall set off into the night. Marshall wasn't a fan of running at night, but he was an engine who never complained. However, all was going well, but little did he, his crew and his passengers know that they were all headed for disaster. Up the line, 2 tankers had derailed over a set of points. However, these tankers were hypersensitive, which meant that they would explode if an engine hit them, no matter what speed the engine was going at. Marshall was completely oblivious to this, just like those poor souls on the Titanic. One minute Marshall was doing his duty, and the next... Hannah completely stopped. She just stared down at the tracks. If it's too upsetting, Hannah, you don't have to go on if you don't want to. But she found her voice, cleared her throat, and continued the story. It was a horrific sight, and the 2 tankers were destroyed, possibly the only hypersensitive tankers to be built. The first coach was on fire, and the second was badly singed. 19 people died, and 15 others were severely injured. As for Marshall, well, he was at the front, so he and his crew got the worst of it. The next morning, I was prepared and sent to the site, and in front of me was a large tarpaulin on a flatbed, and I knew that underneath it was the remains of the engine with happy thoughts. I'm sorry, Hannah. Like I said, if... It's alright, Burke. I've told the story before. We were all devastated, and his brothers and sisters were hurt the most. A few days later, I was at Waterloo Station, and I was expecting everyone to be mourning over the loss of Marshall and the Titanic. However, instead of grieving, they were angry and saying nasty things about Marshall. I was horrified and was wondering where all these lies were coming from. I looked to my right and I got an answer. For Greyhound was present. I am so sorry that your husband happened to be on the train when it crashed. If you want someone to blame, blame it on the Adams radio, for he was being careless and thinking of himself and what a good job he was doing. He liked to believe that he was better than all of us put together. What are you playing at, Greyhound? I'm only giving out the facts, girl. It wasn't his fault, Greyhound, and you know that! I saw one of Marshall's sisters this morning, and I could tell that she was sad. So I went up to her and asked her, do you wish that your brother was never built? Traitor, how dare you say such a horrible thing to his sister? Well, I never liked him, so why should you care? I tried telling the passengers that Greyhound was lying, but it was no good. They now despised Marshall. The damage had been done. Weeks later, I was taking the Pullman train from London to Brighton. It was my first time on the Pullman, and I was nervous because previously I had taken smaller coaches. So this was my first time. While the passengers boarded, I heard a steam engine reversing on the same track as me. And then couple up. But there was nothing there. Then the guard blew the whistle. And we were away. The strange part was that there was no engine in front of me, and yet I could feel the presence of another locomotive. I debated on telling my driver, but I suspected that he would tell me that I was just nervous, so I decided to say nothing. Later that day, I was in Brighton, and while I was having my tender tank topped up with water, I was trying to figure out on what was making the mysterious noises. But I soon got an answer, for at that moment, Marshall appeared right in front of me. I didn't scream, but I was in shock. However, he told me that the mysterious noises were all from him. I sensed that you were nervous about taking the Pullman train for the first time, so I double-headed with you. I have come from beyond the grave to look after you and everyone else. However, you must not tell any human or engine about me unless they claim to have seen or felt my presence." And so he vanished just like that. I felt like I was at peace, and I kept the promise and told no one until 1924.